The Ernie Chambers Show.
I am Ernie Chambers, the person I've been for 84 years. I expect to be Ernie Chambers until I leave this planet. But at any rate, the thing I'm going to talk about today has to do with gun violence in our community. And it needs to be put in the broader context of what happens in the world with reference to armaments, guns, and so forth. But to let people know where I'm going with this, until we focus on terminating the flow of guns into our community, we're not talking about anything. We mean well, and I know people mean well, but having been in politics as long as I have been, you deal with what is practical, not what sounds good, you deal with that. Not what people hope for, you deal with that. But when time comes for decisions to be reached, for policies to be laid out, and decisions to be implemented, we need people in those positions who are going to do what needs to be done to benefit this community, and by extrapolation, everybody else who is similarly situated. But since the reality is that we have been kept at the bottom of the barrel so long, when you raise the bottom of the barrel, you raise everything that's in it. White people have a way of saying, when you raise the tide, all ships rise with it. Well, I have been talking for decades, and some people know a decade is 10 years, about the need to stop the inflow of guns. I'm going to read from some of the things that I have said, things that I have written, to indicate that I didn't just come to this position this morning, yesterday, or last week. And it's an issue we need to talk about every day. It needs to be talked about by educators, by ministers, sociologists, psychologists, doctors, all of those people who supposedly have an interest in uplifting society. I know that people hear from the NRA, the National Rifle Association, that guns don't kill people, people kill people. Well, when I was in the Army, I was never in combat, but I watched enough movies and read enough books to know that when enemy planes are flying over, people don't bring down those planes. Anti-aircraft guns bring down those planes. Let me give an example. I'm not going to give the names of people who've been killed recently. That is a tragedy that families must deal with at the time it happens and for an immeasurable amount of time thereafter. There is the legal system when, if somebody is caught, whether that person will be allowed to cop a plea, whether there will be a trial, will there be a conviction, will there be an acquittal? All of that is a part of it. So not only the incident that brings it into existence, which is the killing, but there are side issues that must be dealt with also. And here's what we all need to look at. You've heard it until you can say it in your sleep. Those in politics will say, and those in churches will say, and those in the community will say, our thoughts and our prayers are with you. With all due respect, that means nothing. People are thinking when they say those words, but their thoughts are not on the person who was killed. Their prayers deal with other things. And if they really meant what they said, then we would put our thoughts toward what leads to this kind of tragedy. What must be done to make sure it doesn't happen again? We can release balloons, and that gives us an emotional release. It's good for people to come together, for there to be this group mourning, but that's not enough. Something has to come after that to ensure that it doesn't happen again. My view is based on the idea that the police know the source of these guns, the state patrol knows, the FBI, The U.S. Government Agency of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, they know. Homeland Security knows. Why do I say it? If a teenager knows where to get these guns, all of these so-called experts know where the guns come from. Why then, you might ask? If they know, don't they do something about it? Right now, the guns and the people using those guns are doing the work of the white supremacists, the generalized racists, and all the others who don't mean Black people anything but harm. If those guns were suddenly turned on white people, I mean, the guns in the hands of these young Black people would be used against white people. You would suddenly see an immediate uncovering of the source of the guns, those who are supplying the guns taken into custody, or because now they know that the worm has turned, they would vacate the premises. But as long as the guns are only used by us against ourselves, what interest would white people have in doing anything about that? And when I say white people, I don't mean white civilians. They didn't take an oath to enforce the law or do the things that sworn police officers, those all law enforcement officers take. So I'm going to tell you why I know the police, as dumb as they might be in Omaha, they're not that dumb. They could not get from the police station to their assigned duty area because they wouldn't know that they should stop when the traffic light is red and go when it's green, but make sure no traffic is coming despite what the lights say. As Mom Mabley used to say, y'all stop telling them children watch them lights when they're going across the street. Them lights ain't hitting nobody. They need to watch them cars. Them cars, baby, is what kills these children. So you stop saying, watch those lights. Tell them to watch those cars. Mom Mabley was as sharp as a Gillette razor blade, but she also had a wit and a way to present these matters so that people would pay attention. When this white female officer was killed a few years ago, there were officers who talked to me in those days. She should not have been put in that position in the first place. She pursued a person into a backyard. The guy shot her, and then the other cops killed him. And you know what these police did? They traced the gun that this man had to a pawn shop in Alabama. They traced it across the country to the pawn shop. And then from there, they would take it to a final supplier or owner of the gun. Now, in a relatively small geographic area of Omaha, they certainly can find out the source of these guns. The police know, and all these other agencies that I mentioned do know. They just are not going to do it. And as long as we don't demand it, they're not even going to consider doing it. What I propose to do, having lost my pulpit of the legislature, I'm going to prepare a lengthy letter to Chief Smotterer. And when I say lengthy, I will give them a few pages to read and consider. And I'm going to make a request to Governor Ricketts. He was so concerned about what the governor of Texas was asking for that he sent a handful of Nebraska state troopers at the cost of taxpayer money in Nebraska, down to Texas to help the Texas law enforcement agents do what their job is and what they're paid to do. Most of what they did was give traffic tickets. What I'm going to do is write a request to the governor and point out that he made it clear that they have state troopers in abundance and they can afford or spare some of them for special assignments. If they can spare, I think it may have been 16 or so, to go all the way to Texas, they can certainly spare a handful to come from Lincoln to Omaha and set up a unit which will track down these guns, find the origin, meaning the suppliers, and end the ready accessibility of these pistols that is plaguing our community. I know there's much sadness, there is much discouragement, and people wonder when, if ever, will this killing end? The killings by and large are being done by young people against young people. Young people are doing what young people do, what they can be predicted to do. So I will ask the governor, will he assign those state troopers? And naturally, I will release any communication that I have with the governor to the media. And what I'm asking for is not unreasonable. We're not talking about something theoretical in Texas. We're talking about a problem that is ongoing right here, right now, in the largest city in this state. I'm going to read some of the things that I said because anybody can say after something has happened, well, I've been saying that for such and such a time. Some people may remember, others won't. But I want to indicate from what I'm reading that nothing has really changed, so there's not much need to change what is being said. This article happened to have appeared in the Omaha Star on February the 4th of 2011. That's 10 years ago. National American pastime, shooting people. Out in Arizona, where they hate illegals, which is the name they have for Hispanics, Jared Lee Loughner, Loughner, killed 6 people and wounded 14 with a semi-automatic pistol tricked out with an extra capacity magazine. Neither killing nor using a gun is unusual in America. Gun killings occur everywhere, from the chaotic metropolis of to the sleepy, bucolic hamlet. And guns are as ubiquitous, that means everywhere, as dandelions in yards and fields in the summertime. Utah is even musing about enshrining the semi-automatic pistol as its state emblem. That's appropriate in view of the fact that the Mormon religion is headquartered out there. Their religion recognizes a Trinity. The Trinity being the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost, the big three. And that provides imagery that carries over into the realm of the gun, whose Trinity comprises Colt, Smith, and Wesson. That's what you call happy symmetry. Considering that killing and guns are so commonplace in the US, as American as apple pie, one might ask. So what's with the hubbub over JL indulging in the national pastime? It's not that he killed or used a gun. It's whom he killed and wounded that captures the spotlight, transfixes public attention, and incites national outrage, along with the standard and predictable sprouting of makeshift memorials, public displays of sorrow and mourning, and pious pleas for prayers and so forth. All lives in America, lives, L-I-V-E-S, are not created equal. In America, the lives of some are valued more than others. And the reason I use the letters JL, I won't have to say Jared Lee Loughner every time. So JL is Jared Loughner. In America, the lives of some are valued more than others. JL killed a federal judge and severely wounded a US Congresswoman. Such important people cannot be enshrouded in a cloak of virtual anonymity, like that draped over the shoulders of ordinary, common, or garden variety people who routinely are hustled violently from life or into the hospital by hot lead spewed from the smoking mouth of a gun in the hands of a mass murderer. Can you name the other five at that time? In 2011, there were five. Can you name the other five people slain in this incident or even the judge? Frequent updates on the condition of Congresswoman Gabrielle Giffords keep her name out there so people will remember it. I had said that these mass shootings are so frequent, they ought to be named in the same way that hurricanes are. Then for a given year, you'd know how many had occurred by where you are in the alphabet with the names of the killers. Why this difference in valuation? Public officials are a cut or two above run-of-the-mill folk, and an attack upon them is regarded by them and their kind as an attack upon what is sacred and essential to the well-being and even the survival of the nation itself. Such an attack upon one of their own sends seismic tremors of terror through the ranks of those, quote, more important, unquote, classes who so often don't give a finger snap for the common people, and the violent calamities that rip and tear at them and the fabric of their lives every day and every night. But isn't that the way it always goes when it comes to bad things happening? When the wolf is at somebody else's door, it's ho-hum time. However, when that ravening beast takes up residency on their doorstep, everybody is expected to stop the music, drop everything, and come running to the rescue. Can you honestly, in your most visualist imagining, envision the president, members of Congress, and federal judges showering attention and concern on ordinary victims of mass killings? Generally, Lincoln's words in his Gettysburg Address are more apt. Those big shots will little know nor long remember what happens to ordinary people who are deemed so unlike themselves in terms of basic human dignity and intrinsic worth that they're not even due anything more than a passing thought and maybe a bit of irritation that these better off people felt because their peaceful existence was temporarily ruffled. JL's gun flash of fame or infamy. At this moment, Jared Lee Loughner, with his chilling, eerie smirk, is commanding center stage, along with his unfortunate co-star, Congresswoman Giffords, because his is an easy story with legs of its own that will carry it a ways farther in the media arena. But as says the song about poor little lambs, it says, poor little lambs have lost our way, ba, ba, ba. We're poor little lambs who've gone astray, ba, ba, ba. Then this line, he'll pass and be forgotten like the rest. That's what will happen to these poor little lambs. They'll pass and be forgotten like the rest. That's what will happen with JL. Most people wouldn't even be aware of him if I weren't giving this little talk now. Without resort to the internet, who can recite the names of the West Virginia, the Fort Hood, and the Omaha Von Mars shooters, or any other of the myriad partakers in the national pastime of mass shootings? Many people don't know how to pronounce JL's last name, and if they see it in print, they don't know how to pronounce it. I mean, they don't know how to pronounce it, and they certainly don't know how to spell it. He's merely the latest 15-minute fad of the day mass killer. He's the antagonist in this American tragedy, while Congresswoman Giffords is the protagonist. The antagonist is the bad person. The protagonist is the good one, the one you cheer for. Before too much time has elapsed, both of them will share the fate of the 7 crew members who perished when the Challenger space shuttle exploded 25 years ago. Their names will gradually fade and ultimately be erased from the active memory of the public. They will pass and be forgotten like the rest. Guns and mass murder. The National Rifle Association, the NRA, gun lovers, and those who garner money from guns are fond of intoning, quote, guns don't kill people, people kill people, unquote. Maybe so, but indisputably, people who do mass killings always use guns. For knives, sticks, or bricks simply won't work. On the other hand, serial killers who fashion their string one victim at a time, craving that up close and personal contact, use everything from hammers to bare hands, and they prefer working in secret and secluded venues, unlike mass shooters who are open and bodacious and care not who or how many may witness their carnage. In fact, some of them publicize and hope that more people will be aware of it. One of them recently stormed a Detroit police precinct wielding a pistol grip shotgun and had those terrified cops skedaddling and diving for cover before he was shot dead after wounding 4 of the scurrying heroes. Now, if he had come with only a knife or a club instead of a gun, mass killers prefer a high efficiency gun that can kill a lot quickly, as was the case with JL, whose extra capacity magazine enabled him to kill a lot quickly. 6 dead and 14 wounded. A stunning few seconds of work for a thing that doesn't kill people without a gun. Whether a person may be a coward or mentally/emotionally disturbed, if a gun finds its way into his hands, a gun that whispers seductively, inducing him to act on his inner feelings, voila, a mass killer. Without ready access to a gun, the disturbed person may vent in various ways, but mass murder, no way. For gunless equals mass murderless. Take it for what it's worth. As I said, I'm going to just read through these, and I'm having difficulty not digressing and going off on a tangent, but I want to get these things out because I had brought them up so many years ago. This was written and appeared in the Omaha Star, February 1st, 2007. This is now 2021. 7 from 21 is 14. This was written 14 years ago. White kids get illegal liquor, Black kids illegal guns. The legislature sometimes is the last resort of people trying to deal with a problem. Other times it's the first. In both instances, on occasion, the legislature is a place where people come simply to vent frustration, anger, and to express a simple sense of hopelessness and futility. This was a Judiciary Committee hearing on underage drinking. White people were very upset because their children, underage, were obtaining alcohol. So they brought the problem to the white legislature. During a January 19, 2007 Judiciary Committee hearing, I listened to much wailing about the difficulty of tracking down people who provided kegs of beer to white youngsters who conducted beer bashes out in the country and other isolated locations. Toward the end, I unburdened my mind. Following are excerpts of my remarks to those white people during that hearing. I don't throw a rock and hide my hand, and I don't say things whispering behind my hand. I say it to those for whom it is intended while they're present. I've been on this committee for 36 years. In this society, which is run by white people, they always attack symptoms only. Teenage drinking is a symptom. There are no meaningful programs in the schools, the churches, or anywhere else which look at the underlying cause. When children are lacking a genuine sense of self-respect, identity, and personal worth, they're going to act out one way or another. So you all are going to be swatting these mosquitoes forever, and you won't even notice a reduction in the number of the mosquitoes that you swat. You can build enough jails to lock up each of the current underage drinkers, but you're going to need more because these kids are going to keep drinking because white adults are afraid to look at what is bothering their children. I'm trying to look at what's happening to Black children. I see that our children are cheated at school. Our children are going to schools controlled by the same white people who control white kids' schools, and those white kids are on alcohol, drugs, and sex. When I insist, give us a chance because we understand our children so that we can educate them, the first thing these white people say is that's segregation. I had managed to get a bill through the legislature that divided OPS into 3 different school districts. Each would have its own superintendent, hire its teachers, establish its curriculum, do what every other school district does. But because Black people are concentrated as we are now and attend segregated schools now, because the white people say, well, they go to school in their neighborhood and their neighborhood is segregated by real estate dealers, not the schools. So the schools are not responsible for being segregated. But when I managed to carve out a district that we would control, tax money would come into that district. We would determine how it was spent. We would set the curriculum. We would purchase the textbooks. Naturally, we would be subject to the state law and the requirements of the State Board of Education, but our goal would be to educate our children, not to give jobs and be a dumping place for incompetent white people who don't care about our children. When white people do it, it's not segregation, it's because of residential concentration of people. Yet, it's not segregation when white kids are going to all white schools. It's segregation only when they say we're tired of white people controlling the education of our children, when they're failing their own. We have no input. We don't establish curriculum. We have no say about anything. Sitting on this committee, and I'm saying this to those white people in that crowded room and the senators on the committee, I listen to all of the problems that white people bring that they're having with their children. Yet they want me to be still while they say, Ernie, we want to be in a position to educate your children too, while failing their own. Until we look at causes, the symptoms are going to be there forever. People who try to eradicate epidemics, this was said before COVID, but it has always applied. So it was as valid then as it is now. It is as valid now as it was then. Until we look at causes, the symptoms are going to be there forever. People who try to eradicate epidemics will treat individuals who are infected because that is part of the job, but they try to determine the cause of the epidemic. Is it a virus, a bacterium? Is it ingested? Is it airborne? Why are these children who are white using alcohol? They know that if they drink and drive, they run the risk of dying, but they're willing to assume that risk. You all have serious problems with your children. We have serious problems with ours. In the Black community, we don't enforce the laws. We don't control the police department. I've been on the FBI, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives about the numbers and ready availability of pistols, even to sub-teenage Black youngsters. The FBI is unresponsive. I've contacted the agent in charge. The chief of police is unresponsive. The man who now is Chief Justice of the Nebraska Supreme Court was head U.S. attorney. He was unresponsive. If these kids know where to get these guns, you mean to tell me that the police don't know where they're coming from? The kids are smarter than the cops? Then let's make the kids the cops. They know where the guns are and they get the guns and they use the guns on each other. We as adults cannot be vigilantes. I refuse to let white people and the media say that it is my job to enforce the law and go out there and catch criminals, whether they are shooters or the sellers of the guns. I don't have that authority in the first place. I cannot arrest anybody. I shouldn't even have to be thinking about it. Now, there are Black people feeling guilty because of the problems of your children, white children. You come down here and tell us, give us more easier ways to charge white children with crimes, to lock them up longer. But if they're the children of rich white people, they don't get locked up. They don't get a record. They don't have these law enforcement problems. And this is even among white people. And you're talking about liquor and drinking by underage children, children being children, until people come here and are looking at the underlying causes, that create the problems in society. I'm not sympathetic with what they're talking about. You know why? Because children are punished in many cases for being what children are and doing what children do. Nobody wants to go after the cause. Senator Cruz's bill talked about children being served alcohol at home and at church, allowing that to occur and not be against the law if it's done at home and at church. And he caught the blues. If drinking by children is so bad, why are you going to let them drink in church? They say, well, they only drink a little bit. So alcohol in church is part of religion. You get mad at these kids who drink because they get too much religion, meaning drink too much alcohol away from church. If it's good in church, it ought to be good anywhere. If you have sex and your penis goes in just a little ways, that's not bad. These kids are not stupid. I'm going to sit here and try to puzzle through it and let you all lock your children up while I try to save ours. They happen to have been there that day wanting harsher punishments for their children. Mr. Chairman, I'm trying to put something out to these well-intentioned, sincere people, and I'm not saying that as a put down. You all are going to be coming back here every year. After I'm long gone, you're going to have the same kind of problems. And as a member of the legislature, I do feel some responsibility to try to find an answer, but my answers are not what everybody wants. So from time to time, you're going to hear me point out how white society, comprising the master race, is not behaving very well, in my opinion. You cannot solve your own problems, and you refuse to let me be in a position to solve ours. I can make myself an example to our children. I can tell them, I will show you what an educated person can do. You know how I do it? I go down to that legislature among 48 white people who a lot of the time don't even like me, but I can read. I can use their language. I mastered their rules and I beat them at their own game. Be an example like me. That's what I say to our children. They say, Ernie, how can I? I don't even know how to read well. And they're going to these schools run by white people. And sometimes if a parent is too aggressive in showing concern for his or her child, they had what they call banning and barring. That parent was not allowed to come and enter the school where his or her child was attending. And if the parent appeared, they would call the police and that parent would be arrested. This is what happens in this white society with liberty and justice for all. In the schools, in reading and language and math, our children test in the 20-something percentile. They can't be like me because they can't read. Then You all want me to sit around here and not do something about these schools because you're going to tell me it would be segregation. I don't want my children around white kids to learn about liquor, liquor kegs, which they don't know anything about right now, to get drugs out of white people's medicine chest, as these white kids can do right now. That's not what I want for my children. And this is what I was saying in the legislative setting. So what do you want my kids to do? What do you want my what do you want my kids to go around white kids for? Integration, you say, and let them be as dumb as opposed. Not because they can't learn, they learn other things, but because they will not be properly taught. Some of my colleagues don't like me to take time doing this, but I'm going to take this time. I'm a member of this legislature, and I'm trying to get at some of these problems. White people want to say, well, Ernie, your way is not our way. Because we're white, we know more than you. We know what's best for your children better than you do. And it's best for your children, for our purposes, that they don't know how to read, that we send white people as their teachers who don't like them, who don't respect them, and don't know how to teach. And that keeps the ball rolling the way we want it to roll. Now you look around, consider your own children and what is happening even today, all these years later, and see if things are getting substantially better for our children. We have Black people now who attend meetings. They sit around white people. They're appointed as leaders and spokespersons of Black people by the white people downtown. They might accompany the mayor or the chief when they come to meetings, town halls, as they call them, among us. Black people riding shotgun for a chief and a white mayor. Then those people get handouts, and they go so cheaply. I'm supposed to be talking about guns, aren't I? Guns are a symptom. And let me say this about that: guns don't kill people, people do. Let's say that 6 young people were killed by guns in the last few weeks. If there were no guns, you would not have 6 dead young Black people, and you would not have 6 young Black murderers. The guns are what did it. Take away the guns, you take away the killing. Do I expect people to act the way, in my judgment, intelligent, concerned people should act to preserve our children, our families, our hope of and for a future? They haven't listened all these years, but you never know when the right chord might be struck. And when people who've been aware of how hard I work in that legislature, I would go down there when we were out of session. I'd be there after the night had fallen, working, not getting paid any more money, $12,000 a year before taxes. But I wanted to do the job the way I thought it should be done. And what I would do is tell people in that legislature, and when I gave talks where there were white people, that I took as my model that emblem on top of the Capitol, which is a man sowing seed. I'm like a sower. I'm not the grower. I just throw out the seed. Other forces determine whether or not they take root and grow. There are things that I say which might be rejected out of hand by people who hear it, but the very same words coming from the right person, somebody of the right complexion, or a quote, acceptable, unquote, quote, Negro, unquote, and it will result in something being done that might help. And we have to do what is available for us to do and not be deterred by the reaction or non-reaction of the people around us. I'm going to skip through some of this. You all come here because your children are drinking. I'm talking about the basics, a chance to go to school and learn how to read. Senators are going to be telling me that that's segregation when I want us to have control of the schools in our community, which our children are attending, which is called local control when white people control the schools in their neighborhood where their children are attending. But when I want us to control ours, then it's segregation. And some of us buy it. Your kids know how to read, they know how to do math, and they know something about language, but mine are not intended to know how to read well. You want to build more jail cells for them, just like Chris Rogers and these others are going along with building this so-called kiddie jail downtown. No jail should be in the downtown area of any city for adults or children. That is not where jail should be located. This jail, this kiddie jail, is being built because Michael Yanni and some of the other white big shots are in real estate, developers, they're architects. They get money for drawing the plans and the building. They don't care what happens inside. Those cells for those kids are so small that they would be considered torture under the laws of war if a prisoner of war were kept in one, as long as these kids will be kept. This county board governs the entire county, not just the city of Omaha. We don't make up a majority of the population in the city of Omaha. We don't make up 50% of the population in the city of Omaha. We may not be 12%. That's just in the city of Omaha. You know how much smaller percentage that makes us of the entire population in Douglas County. Yet our children make up far more than 50% of the children locked up in these white people's jail. And you got people like Chris Rogers, the Black people who go to all these meetings with the mayor and the governor and these others going along with it because their children might get a break. They might live where they've got 5 digits in their address. So they can be the ones who go down there among those people, meaning us, and keep them under control. It troubles me when anybody's child, I don't care the race, religion, sexual orientation, or anything else, winds up locked up in a cage with metal bars, treated like an animal, but it's worse than the way animals are treated because a human being has self-awareness, knows what is happening, has a spirit, a mind, and a basic human dignity that should be respected no matter what that person may have even done. And we respect the human dignity in that person because of the human dignity in us. There should be a level below which we who say we are moral or just people would not allow any of our brothers and sisters to fall. That doesn't mean you don't hold people accountable for the wrong they do. But the aim should not be punishment for punishment's sake, where you want to inflict pain and harm because they did that to somebody else. If you do what they did because they did it and you want them to feel the same thing, you're just like them. You should be in the jail cell with them. Rehabilitation should be what we are working for, to try to make this person better, to improve him or her, to heal that broken spirit, to soothe that mind that may be troubled by things that we as adults couldn't even handle very well. See, if adults get a serious problem, they can go get drunk if they want to. They can find drugs. They can get prescription drugs. But the children are the scapegoats, and they suffer for the sins of their fathers and mothers, and that is not right. And it troubles me. It's why I fight in the way that I do on the kind of issues that I undertake. Everybody will pat the successful person on the back. What about the one who's bringing up the rear. Well, the Bible said the last shall be first and the first shall be last. But you all say those things and they mean nothing. Going back to this, I could say, I don't even know why I take the time to give these presentations. And that would be true, but I do know why I do it. There might be somebody out there who will listen, somebody who may be on his or her last nerve and will hear something that will make him or her say, well, maybe I can go a little further. Maybe there is somebody who will understand. And believe it or not, I get anonymous letters where people are crying out for help, but they won't give their name. They won't give their address. They just want somebody to read the letter. And they believe that if they write it and send it to my house, then I'll read the letter. And if they can feel that somebody knows, somebody might care. And I do. What I don't care is what anybody thinks about me and what I do or what they say. If they don't like it, don't listen to it. You don't have to accept it. If you are a fool, you think that's going to make me angry, then I'm a bigger fool than you are. You think I'm going to be angry at people who won't get vaccinated? Anger rests in the bosom of a fool, says the Bible. But if anger is the driving force to lead a person to take action to address the thing that made him or her angry, if it's the kind of thing that should generate anger, then anger itself is not bad. It's not resting here. It's a motive force, and it's driving you to do what ought to be done. But if you don't want to be vaccinated, fine. A peculiar thing is happening in Florida. They have a governor named DeSantis. He said he's not going to get vaccinated and his children won't, and his are going to go to school and they're not going to wear a mask, and nobody else's child should have to wear a mask. And you know what? They have a surge of that COVID-19 variant. I don't know why they don't call it variant. What it is really is a mutation. A mutation is something that goes all the way down to the genetic level of the living creature, which means that one can pass it on to its offspring and on to its offspring, and it goes on and on. Maybe the medical people feel that if they use the word mutation rather than variant, then people would panic. But forget that. The terminology is what it is. Things are what they are. But if you listen to this DeSantis, then you'll listen to a madman, and you'll see how docile white Americans are. Here is one man, because he's the governor, dictating policies that are leading to a surge in deaths of their children and other people. Florida is considered the epicenter or the hottest spot where the so-called variant is being found, and it is just COVID-19's big brother. You know the story of the three billy goats gruff and the troll under the bridge? Well, COVID-19 pure is the little billy goat gruff. COVID variant is the middle billy goat gruff. And COVID mutation is the big billy goat gruff, and that's what they're having in Florida. There is an ocean liner company, I don't remember the name of it, but it's one of these that goes all over the world, and they will not let people on their ship if they don't show proof of vaccination and submit to examine to tests periodically, because they don't want COVID on their craft. They went to court and the judge agreed that they can do that. And DeSantis, the governor, had on his own just put in place. Now, this is one white man to show how arrogant these white men are. And they know other white people are so willing to go along and weak and spineless, they'll let him do it. He said for every passenger who is told he or she can't get on without proof of vaccination, that'll be a $5,000 fine against the ship company. Well, they just were not running any cruises, but they went to court, and the judge said they have a right to do what they want to do when it's to protect the customers they have, their business interests, and so forth. They are a private enterprise, not the state. DeSantis said immediately he's going to appeal. He'll lose. The judges are not crazy. He is. He is saying that people should have the right to decide that their children will not wear a mask or get a vaccination. But you know what the hypocrite did the other day? He asked the federal government to send them 500 or so. You know the name of that machine? It starts with a V, ventilator. Their hospitals are overbooked. And that's a nice way of saying it. And now this man who's doing everything that will spread the variant and ordinary COVID-19 is asking for the federal government, who operates from taxpayer money, and it comes from people all over the country, even some from me, and I was double vaccinated as soon as possible, to get ventilators for people who are on their last legs and literally their last breaths because of policies he's implementing. That's in the United States of America, supposedly a leader of the world. Maybe the leader in stupidity, but that's getting away from the guns, isn't it? But it all ties in together because America is a basket of confusion. Everywhere you look, there are problems. But anyway, let me get back to what I said I was going to talk about here today. I got off on education because that is the key. Knowledge is power. I know more about white people's literature than they do. I know the lyrics to more of their songs than they do. I understand the philosophy of their philosophers whom they cannot even quote than they do, because I read and I understand what I read. I understand English when I hear it spoken, and I'm not talking about Latinx people and others who have a language of their own country. I mean Americans who don't speak English. And you know what I've had people ask? Well, if you don't like America, why do you stay here? Why don't you go someplace else? Why do you stay here? And I respond in the way that a guy named H.L. Mencken did. He was a journalist and he was considered pro-Nazi and anti-Black and a lot of other things, but he was sharp as a tack. And they asked him why he stays in America if it's so bad. He said, why do men visit zoos? Being here is like visiting the zoo. Now, when people stop going to visit the zoo, then maybe I'll go somewhere else, except that I won't. I have ancestors that go back farther than the white people in this country. But it means nothing when it comes to us. And even though, as a Black man, I'm not accorded the rights and privileges guaranteed by the Constitution, I'm not going anywhere. At a time when rich white boys were dodging the draft and going to Canada, Trump was saying he had sore feet. I volunteered and I did my time. And maybe Tony Orlando's song could have been for me. I'm coming home, I've done my time. And I'm going to have what is and isn't mine. You know, tie a yellow ribbon around the old oak tree. People thought that meant he was coming back from jail. No, he's coming back from the military. But I got an honorable discharge. And I've said this before, I pay my taxes. I got a degree from Creighton Law School, Creighton University, a diploma from Tech High, a diploma from Lothrop Grade School. I did the things that white people aspire to and do it better than those I'm in competition with. And that's not a boast. I'm merely stating a matter of fact. Some of their reporters would really rib the senators by pointing out how they would change the rules, yet they never could seem to stop me. One headline said, stopping Chambers is easier said than done. And that's true. I'm like an adult dealing with children playing in a sandbox on a school playground. I don't take low to white people because they have a badge or a title. I don't run and fall in behind these Negroes, and that's a term that's disparaging, who are huffing and puffing behind white people, accepting the crumbs from their table. You can see the mayor recycling used up black men. Her chief of staff is a former chief of the police, and the white cops treated him like he had a dog, a tail. They had a newspaper and they condemned him, they ridiculed him, and he did nothing about it. They had no respect for him whatsoever. And they referred to the police department as a quasi military operation, which means you have rank orders and you obey orders. They didn't respect him at all. So he got a job with the Urban League, which picks up black men who can't make it anywhere. And then the mayor made him her chief of staff. And with all the wrongful things she's doing, he will, as Jesus said, as was said about Jesus, like a lamb before her shearer is dumb, so he openeth not his mouth. He's not going to say anything for this community. One of the articles I have here deals with when his son was out riding around at 3 a.m. Some people shot at him, and the chief didn't say anything and still did not try to go after the source of the guns. Ben Gray was defeated at the polls, but this white woman is going to keep her finger on the scale, and there are black people in this community still running and sniffing behind the mayor. She said, yes, you have a District 2. Yes, there is this land bank. And yes, there's to be a voting member, but I'm not going to take the one you voted for to take Ben Gray's place. And I'm not going to listen to the one who took Ben Gray's place. Oh, well, when white people are voting, the white people who vote in a white district, what they say means something. And the white person who is elected by those white people, when he or she speaks, that means something. But when the black people speak by way of the ballot, it means nothing to her. And there are black people still sniffing behind her. And you think she has respect for them? When they can openly and notoriously insult, degrade, and demean our elected representative, that's showing what she thinks about us, which is nothing. And when we swallow spit, then we can expect them to give us more of the same. We need black men who will stand up and be men. Black women who will stand up and be women. All we're pushing for, and white people find it outrageous, is to get that respect every human being is entitled to. And now you got this old washed up white woman, former governor, Kay Orr, coming out saying she's against CRT, critical race theory, and she doesn't even know what it is. So white people speak from ignorance. I'm not going to say much more on the guns because I think I've said enough. And I'm beginning to be moved by a different spirit. And I use that term spirit advisedly. I will, at a future time, talk about the guns again because we're going to have that problem. And I am going to prepare that request to the governor to send some state troopers to Omaha to show as much get up and go as these black youngsters have shown when they can go buy these guns and clean out these nests of killers by proxy in our community. Since a lot of you all out there go to church, I used to go to church all the time. And there's this old sister, and she knew the Bible. And Visiting preachers didn't know her, and she was one of these people who will finish your sentences for you. So a visiting preacher would take his text and he says, my text is, the Lord is my shepherd. And she would holler, I shall not want. And he would be surprised and kind of have to get himself together. Well, these kids are finishing the statements, but we need somebody now who will show as much get up as these kids have shown and go after the suppliers of these guns. And if these so-called Black leaders do not begin to insist that the source of these guns be rooted out, then you ought to repudiate those so-called leaders. They've been appointed by white people, as has been the case forever. But back to the church, this young man would pray out loud, and he'd always say, Lord, take the spider webs out of my life. Lord, clean the spider webs out of my life. So the old deacon got tired of hearing him. He said, son, you pray out loud and you put your business out where everybody can hear it. So you invited me to say something. I'm tired of hearing you say the same thing. Lord, take the spider webs out of my life. You stop asking the Lord to take those spider webs out of your life and you kill the spider. Brothers and sisters, friends, enemies, and neutrals, the spider webs in our community are the guns. The spider is the supplier. Until you get the supplier, that which is supplied is going to continue. There are going to be more killings of Black youngsters by Black youngsters. There are going to be more prayer vigils, more of these makeshift memorials, the releasing of balloons, and the white people laugh. They send us thousands of miles across the sea to fight supposedly for America, and we are in segregated facilities at that. Now, the military is not formally segregated, but that's what they would do to us. And we were the ones who were loyal. It's a funny thing. Who are the famous traitors in history? Although he wound up being acquitted, Benedict Arnold, everybody knows him as a traitor. He was white. Judas Iscariot, who betrayed Christ, he was a Jew. Quisling was a European. So you have a white who is famous as a traitor. You have a Jew famous as a traitor, an American famous as a traitor. And the only time a Black person has been a traitor was when he betrayed his own people to get along with these white people. I'm not going to take but about one more minute. Then I'm going to be out of here like the canary whose cage door was left open. And so I won't forget, I am Ernie Chambers, always have been, always will be. And I'm going to talk more about the guns and other things. So until next time, and you don't have to worry about a mushroom cloud between now and then because Trump's gone, we should all be back here. But you never know when the Grim Reaper might come to harvest you. But my having escaped for 84 years gives me the feeling that I will be here a while longer. And based on wanting to keep my word, I have about 10 seconds. And by the time I finish this statement, it will be over. And that statement will be, I'm Ernie Chambers, and I'll speak to you again in the future.
Thank you for watching The Ernie Chambers Show. If you'd like to make suggestions, email us at ewcfacts@gmail.com. That's ewcfacts@gmail.com. This has been an EWC Communication production.